Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Inga Cotton. I'm the founder and executive director of San Antonio Charter Moms. These are Charter Moms Chats, and we're featuring charter schools in the San Antonio area that are holding open enrollment. Today, we're featuring the Gathering Place. And my guest to talk with us about the Gathering Place is Brian Sparks. He's the interim superintendent of the Gathering Place. So, Brian, thank you for joining me on Charter Moms Chats.
Thank you for having me. This is great. Appreciate it.
Okay, so the Gathering Place, it's been around for a couple years, but for folks who maybe haven't heard of it yet, could you describe like the mission and vision of the Gathering Place?
Sure. So we have a really special school here, and at the Gathering Place, our mission and vision is to nurture and celebrate the inner brilliance of every child at our school. We do that through lots of different ways. We have project-based learning. We have a social emotional curriculum at our campus. We have a variety of arts options that we'll talk about on the call today. In addition to offering high quality curriculum that we have in place for all of our kids in our kinder through currently 5th grade, next year 6th grade classrooms. And we really believe that in order to reach every child, we have to teach the whole child. And that's a really challenging thing to do in schools, and a lot of schools are grappling with how to do that well. And we have lots of adults here who are working really hard to figure out how we can reach every single kid in our school and do it the best way that we know how.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's a great summary. I want to, there's certain aspects of this that I'm especially interested in. So one of those is the project-based learning aspect. And this is something that, like, when I was growing up, people didn't really talk about that much. It was more like, okay, here's your worksheet, the teacher's at the board, writing problems on the board. But that's not what project-based learning is like. So what are some of the benefits of that? And what should families expect if they find out that their kids are engaged in project-based learning?
Yeah, so project-based learning facilitates an opportunity for a student in a class to go through a series of lessons that's tied to a unit where it leads kids to surface learning associated with an important question, a driving question that the class or the group of kids establishes along with the teacher. And then we align Texas standards to that question to examine it through reading, through writing, through math, through science, through talking to local experts in the field, to going to visit places. And it leads towards a culminating experience where they get to demonstrate their learning in some way. And that can look lots of different ways. And part of what I appreciate about project-based learning as a leader who's been at a couple campuses that has implemented project-based learning, is that kids, one of the things that I love to see is a 4th or 5th grade student be really curious and inquisitive about something that they're learning. And if you visit lots and lots of schools, you don't see that very much in those older kids. You see it a lot in the kinder and 1st graders because they are curious about everything. And project-based learning is a way to really encourage engagement for kids throughout the years and to identify how you can invest them in the work so they can see their fingerprints in both what you're learning, but also how you're learning it and how it can then come to life in a school community. And that can look lots of different ways, through building gardens to establishing a solution for where to hang the jackets on the playground, like we did a little while ago, to our 5th grade kids are putting on an enrollment fair that they're going to host a Saturday at our campus to recruit kids to our school, but also to share the great things about what we do here with the broader community. So it can look lots of different ways. And by tying standards to it, kids learn the Texas standards, but they're embedded into units. We're getting better at it every year. The units change every single year, and we also have some fixed units as well. And it's a really cool part of our campus that I think makes us unique.
Yeah. Well, I think you mentioned about like sort of older elementary. Sometimes those kids can get a little, they start to get jaded. They get a little bit like surprisingly world wise right. That's the thing about tweens these days. But I think that one thing is, I think sometimes we don't give kids enough credit for how observant they are about like the problems that they hear about in the world, like the stresses that they hear their caregivers talk about. Mm-hmm. And so it's important to help kids work on problems that they know are relevant to the real world, right? That they can feel like that they're making a difference, right? And I think that's part of what's baked in at the Gathering Place, is like wanting to be very aware of the community and have a sense of justice. Like, how are we going to solve problems and make the world better, right? So I see like the project-based learning and the community focus being very interwoven.
Yeah, I agree. That's a nice summary of like that. We want kids to feel a sense of agency of their learning, and feel like they're a part of the process and they have their fingerprints on it. Um, and by doing that, the teacher moves more as a direct deliverer of a project-based learning unit, and they're more as a facilitator of learning, and they're orchestrating groups, and kids are leading a lot of that work. And that becomes really interesting for kids to know that they can have strong level of voice in what they're doing, but also how they're doing it. And it also is challenging too, to figure out how we can facilitate it, and it really positions teachers to be more designers of experiences as opposed to delivers of information.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and one thing you mentioned too is that, and this for families with younger children, this might be a strange terminology, but like the TEKS, right? The Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. Like this is the outline of the topics that Texas public schools are supposed to cover every year, right? So they apply to traditional public schools, they apply to charter schools, and it's it's an additional challenge to make sure that you're covering the TEKS through project-based learning. It's much easier to just say, okay, we have this stack of worksheets, and this worksheet is about fractions, and this worksheet is about money math, and you just check all the boxes, right? But so it means it's your teachers are taking an extra load to to guide the students and make sure that TEKS are covered. But I think it's something I feel like I've seen the Gathering Place grow in, which is staying true to these ideals, right, about hands-on learning, but also continuing to grow the academic rigor, right? Make sure that students are getting a good handle on that. So I was wondering, can you talk about some of the types of curriculum that you've been introducing? I think we spoke of offline earlier, like you mentioned, like Eureka, and so can you kind of fill in that aspect of it, that right, the academics, like the project-based learning, but also being confident that students are getting the basics.
Right. Yeah. So in project-based learning, it's like in our schedule, it's a standalone block of time where kids work on interdisciplinary skills. The units are variable depending on the time of the year. They're still aligned to standards. We also have other blocks of the day that are using high quality curriculum. So we have Eureka, which is a math curriculum being used around the state and in a broader sense around the nation at a really high volume. And it's a really interesting math curriculum. And I'm a math guy, so I like this stuff and like to think about it, how it stacks from year to year to year, and how as kids learn the foundational skills in Eureka, and if you're a caregiver who's looking at math curriculums, it's an interesting one to look at to figure out how it looks and sounds potentially different than how we learn math when we were kids. For me, it was many years ago, but really it's getting at helping kids construct and deconstruct numbers and stack skills on top of one another from year to year, and how division is really just a different way to subtract, and helping kids connect the dots there and giving them skills to actually access it. So we use Eureka for math, and it's a really strong curriculum, and one that we're in year 2 of implementing on our campus. And then for literacy, we use Savas with 2 V's in the middle for our literacy curriculum for all of our kinder through 5th grade classes. And then our lower classes for phonics and phonemic awareness, we use Hegarty and then SIPS in a couple different forums for intervention for the whole class and also in small group. These are all really high quality curriculums, and ones that, I think when I was a brand new principal a long time ago, I used to think that I could do much of my school day through project-based learning and much of my school day through like using the right process, and the kids would just get it. And now I think that we have to use more high quality curriculums to implement curriculum and to help kids access foundational skills. And that's an evolution that I went on as a leader of schools, to figure out how kids needed that regimented high quality curricular experiences. And here we're able to do that stacked with project-based learning, where we can mold those two together, where kids get the foundational skills, but they also have an opportunity to apply them in interesting contexts. And it's something that I think we're learning as a school in the last couple of years about how we can get better at the high quality curriculum materials, and also keep some of the parts that made TGP really interesting and special in the early years still part of the school moving forward. And we're sort of negotiating that conversation now as we implement these curriculums and get better and better over time doing them. We're figuring out what we can do to high quality and to do well, and what role the teacher plays in that conversation.
I feel like I'm really grateful you're talking to me, but I also know that we're kind of in midstream of this, change process, right? That, you're relatively new as the leader at the Gathering Place. Although I think when I first met you, I think you were at the Lamar campus in, more
Mhm.
close to downtown San Antonio. And, so I know these things are close to your heart because it's been part of your leadership for a long time. So,
Yeah.
so I guess what I want families to take away from this is that, Gathering Place is evolving, and that it means we're going to cover some high points in this conversation and also in the, I want to plug, this is my chance to plug the enrollment guide blog post that we just updated. So it's at schartermoms.com. It's at the top of the blog right now. Like those are meant to kind of spark, caregivers' curiosity, but hopefully they can like come and do a school tour. They can come and ask questions and get, dig deeper into, what these changes are and like in what ways, are you staying faithful to the original vision of, the project-based learning and having kids be very hands-on and having them be connected with their community.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's something about like you're forming the school, you're starting this like instructional vision and mission and going down a path. And as you do that, there's learnings along the way. And I think I came in this year back in October when there was already 3+ years of learning and kind of muscle memory and figuring out what worked and didn't work. And I think we're in a spot now where the past experience I have is helpful to the conversation to figure out, because I've faced a lot of these challenges before and it can be helpful to negotiate how you can sort of have it all. Like, like how do you have really interesting curricular experiences for kids and select and implement really high quality curriculums for kids and find ways to integrate those skills into units in ways that are organic and thoughtful and strategic. And it's hard work to do. It's hard work to figure out how to do that well. And we have a lot of people who are working on it, who are working long hours to try to negotiate how we can do this right by kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and part of it is, having a communication process that goes both ways, right? From leadership to the teachers and the guides, and from leadership to the caregivers and the families, and just making sure that they get their concerns aired, as it's like, well, but are we still going to do this, right? Do we still have, right? And there are essential elements that you are keeping, right? Like the arts education and like the enrichment, like, culinary and like the outside learning and the makerspace and stuff like that, right? So those are elements of continuity.
Right. Yeah. The DNA and sort of the essence of the campus is remaining and will always remain. There's so many people who care deeply about the campus and about even before it started, who have been part of that journey and who care about sort of the feeling of the campus and the experiences kids have. And we will still have culinary arts. We'll still have lots of outside play. Our campus is spread out over 7 acres. It's a big kind of sprawling piece of property, and outside play movement is always going to be a part of who we are. Like that's not going anywhere. Hiring people who are strongly aligned to the initial mission of the organization is always going to be part of who we are. And we've done a really good job of hiring people who are caring, empathic, whole child people. And we'll keep doing that. We will keep sort of surfacing like how we can align the actions and the structures and the systems we put in place to the identity of the campus, while also moving towards having a really strong laser focus on student outcomes. Because we can do it all, but we have to be really targeted with how we use our time and energy. And I would also add that like we're trying to do a better job, and this has been a pretty concerted effort on my part and in our team to figure out what do the feedback loops look like with our caregivers and with our students and with our staff, and when we're picking up on pain points or concerns, like how do we use those as a feedback loop and a sounding board, but also a slingshot to then build momentum forward. And like sharing concerns and questions are a good thing if they're used to generate responses that are coherent and focused and help explain the rationale behind the why. And when we don't do those things, it can feel like it's a bad thing or we're not being listened to. And we're trying to do a really good job. And I know you all tell me if I'm not, community, of identifying how we can get feedback, share, get survey data, have individual conversations, have focus groups, have committee structures where people can feel like they're part of the process. Because I want to be, if I'm a part of something and my voice is heard, validated, used to inform the next steps of the organization, I want to be a part of that. Me, Brian. And I think that works for kids. If you're a 5-year-old, or if you're a new teacher, or if you're a veteran teacher, if you're a caregiver who's been here for 1 week or 4 years, you want to know that you're a part of the process and that your voices are heard and used. So we're trying to do a really thoughtful job of that, but also using some of the learnings over the years to help inform where we are now. So the now story is the one that really, the now and then the what's next story is the one that we're anchoring to, and not the story of 2 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's what I hope families can come and visit the gathering place, like see the campus, meet the teachers and understand what the school is now and in the near future. Because well, I guess so. I asked you kind of a two-part question before, but one of the parts of the question was about things like the arts and enrichment and like the makerspace and outdoor play. So I'm wondering, can you kind of paint a picture of like maybe like the arts education aspect? Because I think that's something that it's a concern that comes up a lot for parents. They feel like maybe in their traditional public school there is such an emphasis on preparing for standardized tests that sometimes like the arts, it's like, well, that's not a tested subject. We're not going to spend as much time on that. But it's so important for kids, right? Like it helps them feel so much more engaged in school. They can express themselves and they get a sense of belonging.
Yeah, when you survey kids in schools and you ask them like what draws them to school, specifically older kids, and as they get into middle school, it's often the arts that really gets them to school, gets them to show up, gets them to engage. And they also go to math class along the way, but really it's the arts that really draws them. And I think we've done a really strong job here of having a wide variety of offerings, and having a lengthy period of time for kids to go to those offerings. So they have 60 minutes of arts and enrichment offerings every single day at our school. And they span from PE to visual arts to digital fluency to immersion literacy to culinary. The culinary space is really cool. It's something I haven't really seen in an elementary school before. And I was in there the other day watching a lesson, and kids were so engaged, and there was such explicit, thoughtful modeling for them about what they should do. And then they had all the tools in front of them, and then they got to cook the thing, and it was really cool. And I've seen it a couple of times, but it was really impactful in that moment. And we're also surfacing, like, one of the evolutions of the campus is that we used to have other offerings that were more performance-based offerings. Now we're surfacing with our kids, what do you want to see moving forward? What do we hold on to? What do we evolve to? Specifically, like dance is one of the ones that's come up, as we used to offer that. We didn't this year. There's an interest from students, but also from caregivers to bring that back. So do we bring it back next year? We're about to finalize a decision in the next couple of weeks to move towards what our offerings are for next year. And then we're thinking about programmatically, there's a lot of them, right? So is it better to have, if you're a 5-year-old, is it better to have a little bit of a lot of things or a lot of a couple of things? And we're trying to negotiate, and we've done it a couple of different ways over the years, but our current thinking is that having a lot or a little of lots of things in the younger grades makes sense to sort of like spread your wings a little bit and see what's out there. And then as we get older, we have some more student choice built into the system where you can go more immersively into a couple of areas over the course of time. That way you can, not that we're trying to like train Juilliard artists in 4th grade or musicians in 4th grade, but we do want kids to have more of an immersive experience as they get older, where they can get really good at something or a couple of things. So that's what our current thinking is. And we're also thinking about middle school. Like, how does programming in middle school look like in order to sort of scaffold from 4th and 5th grade up towards a middle school program, and how to do that in a really systematic, thoughtful, strategic way. We do have a longer period of time for arts and enrichment, which structurally in the schedule is helpful for the teachers to have time. When in most schools it's 45 minutes long, 45 or 50 minutes long. Ours is 60 minutes for the class. So that time makes a big difference as far as what you can do with the kids. If you're teaching 5-year-olds and you transition them in and teach for 25 minutes and transition them out, it's not a whole lot of traction you can get. So our lengthier time is helpful in that way. So yeah, so we're trying to be really thoughtful about, like, we are putting a lot of human resources into that region of our school, and we want it to be thoughtful, strategic, engaging for kids, repeatable in nature, so caregivers and students come to know what to expect year in, year out. And we're sort of figuring out what that looks like as we kind of phase into year 5 here.
Yeah. One of the things about extraordinary is the amount of independence and confidence that kids can get from that, right? If they're, using tools that maybe at home the parents are like, "Don't touch that, that's sharp," but if they're guided in the right way and they're using it under supervision in a safe way, then they get more confidence about it, and they're learning a life skill that will help them
That's right.
down the road. So.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of stories from caregivers where the kids are coming home to talk about a food that they prepped in the kitchen, and it's a food that the family or the caregivers have never introduced to the kid before. So it's been really cool to hear, how like there's an exposure piece here that, and it also made me wonder as a parent myself, like, am I giving the same 8 meals over and over again to my kids, and am I not exposing them to a wide enough variety of food? And it's probably the truth, that we go to the same things over and over again. But I think it prompted that for me, like that, how cool for a 5, 6, 10, 11, 12-year-old to have that exposure. And I didn't really know how to do anything in the kitchen until I was much older, other than use a microwave. So it's a really interesting part of our school.
Yeah. And then I know that, I moved to San Antonio as a teenager, and so I was a little bit outside the window for this, but Apple County Fair, right? That was the location like years ago, right, where the campus is now. So there's all these live oak trees, this open space, and so what are some of the ways that the students get to enjoy that open space, right? Like there's playgrounds, but also they get to dig in the dirt a little bit too, right?
Yeah, we have lots of space on the campus, and there's an amphitheater area where you walk in and there's like this sort of like horseshoe space where kids can sit and hear presentations, or they play soccer in that area too. It's a nice convening space. There's also a play area in the middle right next to the wheelhouse. The wheelhouse is like our maker space, PBL space, where Jimmy, one of our teacher leaders, runs that space. And it's often open during open space play times where kids are going in there to tinker a little bit. There's also formalized classes that go through there as well. There's a basketball court as you walk towards the kindergarten classrooms. And then there's the recess area, which is a play on recess, where there's a lot of trees, shady, mostly for our younger kids. And one of the kind of cool things that was interesting to me as somebody who was new to the community was, in most schools, you're told to not climb the trees, not hang on the branches, not, stop doing that. And here there's pegs on the side of the tree where kids can climb up to a certain point in the tree. So it's like you're encouraging kids to explore, to play, to sort of uncover what's interesting to them. And that's actually encouraged here. Another sort of interesting piece is like skateboarding. So we have a bunch of helmets that we purchase, and kids are encouraged to bring their skateboards. We also have some skateboards here on campus. And so kids are encouraged to ride the skateboard around. And so it's just like there's a level of acceptance and appreciation for kids being kids. And that it's not meant to be stifled or to shut it down. And that's something that makes the campus special. And it's also a challenge, because if you're going to ride more skateboards, you're going to have more injuries. And so, how do we monitor that? How do we keep kids safe is part of our ongoing conversations in our school.
Yeah. And that's sort of part of the challenge of parenting these days, right? Is that like, I think, if we aren't keeping our kids wrapped in bubble wrap, then we might get criticism or judgment from strangers, which I've experienced that, right? Like I'm trying to find the right balance of how to help my kids build confidence and enjoy some freedom and not just say no to everything. But then I've had, strangers tell me that I'm doing it wrong. Like, gee, thanks, right? So, so like you said, it's something to negotiate, but I feel like that maybe the default way, or maybe the dominant mode in our culture, is perhaps not giving kids enough opportunity to stretch and grow and become confident in their own ability to assess risk and navigate the world.
Right. No, I think being here as a leader, as a new educator in the school, it's made me reflect on my own parenting, quite frankly, and like try to surface, like, was I too conservative? And my kids are a little bit older; they're in high school, but like, was I too conservative? Was I too protective? And like, what should I, or what can I do different now as a caregiver and as a parent? And also, how do we help our new caregivers into our community, or our current caregivers, appreciate and understand like the value set that's here, and also continue to surface as a school, like, we're using the skateboards. Is that an appropriate level of risk with the helmets, with padding? Like, are we okay there or not? And if not, how do we adjust it? And if so, okay, then how do we communicate it to the broader community, or partner with our caregivers to be a part of that conversation to identify, is that the right move? And it might not be, but like there's a willingness to and a want to go into that space here. As opposed to shying away from it and being afraid or against even having the conversation.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, as the founder of San Antonio Charter Moms, right, I'm a huge believer in parents' knowledge and power and making decisions about their kids. But I also think that under the best circumstances, it's a dialogue, right, where like parents they know their kids the best and they're speaking up for their kids, but also I've learned from every school that my child has been in, whether it's like parenting or supporting my kids through their learning differences, or so I want to take in all the good ideas, right, and find the best synthesis I can that's going to help my kids succeed, when they don't need me anymore, right, so I can retire from parenting. And and so it sounds like that's the frame of mind you have, is right, you want the caregivers to feel like they can come in and speak up and say, hey, I don't think I'm concerned about safety with this, but also maybe the caregivers, they're being influenced by the ideas that their kids are bringing home. Like, hey, at school, I got to do this and
right.
The world didn't end, right? And I tried this food and I actually liked it. And so that just flowed both ways.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That like it needs to be a conversation, needs to be a dialogue. And I think that we're in a place where that dialogue is increasing and the lines of communication are continuing to be open in a way that helps us get stronger. And that's really, and it gets stronger in order to create a viable, strong choice for caregivers to look at. And I really believe, I think, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, that the system needs choices, and the educational system outside of TGP and our school, like, it needs choices. And when I talk to caregivers, and I've talked to a lot of caregivers, like, when I talk to them, whether they're looking at our school or I'm just having a conversation, like, you really have to identify what are the 2, 3, 4 highest priority things for you in a school and help sift that out. And it may or may not be the things that are maybe your instinctual things to go to, but you have to really think immersively about it in a way that that helps you use that as a filter to select a school. And sometimes that's led a caregiver to not select one of my former campuses or our school here. And sometimes it's helped them to filter out that it's actually the right choice here. So it really is about like offering choices and options and having a system that gets stronger together through like feedback and productive dialogue and criticism. But we have to talk about it and figure it out.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate your help. Like SD Charter Moms is a truth-seeking enterprise, and we're trying to just like not necessarily steer parents towards one type of school or another, but just so that they can understand the options better. And I think people they're blown away by just how many. Like, so last time I checked, it was like 170 plus campuses that we cover on our website. That's a lot. It's a lot to wrap your head around. But trying to focusing on what's most important to you, and then also. This is my cue to plug our Facebook group, right? Because like parents, they'll join that and say, okay, I'm looking for this, and then helpful members of the group will comment and say, okay, if you're looking for project-based learning, here's some options. Here's some schools that follow that, right? Like if you want schools that are very community-oriented and talk about real-world problems, here's some schools where that's part of the culture. And it makes like what I do with SHR Moms, it's never boring. It's always exciting. There's always something new around the corner, so like, an educator or a founder has like a new idea about how to solve this problem, right? How do we help prepare kids for this world we live in, do it in partnership with the caregivers, and make it as engaging as possible, and finding the right balance with using technology and things like that.
No, I when I was in SAISD, I think one of the challenges we saw was that even within that one district, the number of choices, the number of options, that it was just hard for caregivers to navigate even that small ecosystem that was part of a broader landscape in San Antonio. And I talked to a lot of caregivers and families about like how complex the system is here, and it's tricky. And I'm grateful for the work that you're doing, because it is very intricate, messy, emerging, and it's a needed voice, a batch of work for the community that's helping people identify a spot that's a good fit for them. And that's not easy work, especially in San Antonio right now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what I hope is that more and more families feel like the school where their children are at, that those leaders and those teachers are allies, and that they're on the same page and they're working towards the same goals. And it's like no school is going to be a perfect fit, but if you can get the big things right, and then it takes away stress out of your life, because then you feel like you're not like having to counter things that your kids are learning at school, or having to supplement with a lot of things that they're not getting at school. Right. So because like if parents are worried about, oh my gosh, when the kids are at home, they're on screens all the time. Well, if they're at the gathering place, they're going to be spending a lot of time outside, right? And they're going to be getting their hands in stuff, and they're going to come home with all kinds of interesting stories and questions about, things that they heard about at school.
Yeah, you're making me think about one of my first interactions on the campus. I was visiting before I took the job, and I was walking around. And I was like, those racks outside the classrooms, and I realized that they were racks to hold galoshes. So like when it rains, instead of like hiding inside, being away from the rain, it's not if it's like a downpour, but like if it's a little bit wet, then kids are going to be out and they're going to come home a little bit wet sometimes, and that's like part of what's just accepted here. And they're going to dig in the dirt a little bit, and they're wearing a white shirt. You probably won't make that mistake again. You have a darker shirt. So there's just a level of like appreciation that I think is really evident in the staff. I mean, the staff, they're really just wonderfully hardworking, kind, empathic people who are doing the very best they can every single day. And the system, both locally at our campus and the broader San Antonio system, like I hope it has more people like what we have currently right now at our campus enter into it, because they're just wonderful. And it's really, I'm really grateful that they're here.
Yeah. Oh, hey, we have a comment. Kim. Hey, Kim. I remember. Yes, our kids used to be at the same campus back in the day. But yeah, Kim says founding family love TGP. So Brian, there are TGP fans out there.
Thanks, Kim. I don't know you, but it's nice to meet you.
Oh, Kim says hey. That's fun. Brian, that's a great story about the galoshes, right? So as a person of Scandinavian descent, my motto is there's no such thing as bad weather, it's just the wrong clothing. So no, when it's 99 outside, that challenges me a little bit, but I'm still outside anyway. So
I haven't experienced hot weather here yet at this campus. October through right now is all I've been here, so I've only seen the good stuff. I'm not looking forward to May and August, because it is a lot of outside time. And
the shade helps.
Shade
helps.
helps. Yeah, shade helps. I agree.
Yeah. So are there more stories you can share about encounters you've had on campus, or like things that kind of demonstrate what that school culture? Like you talked about the cooking, the culinary classes. You talked about like being outside in all kinds of weather.
Yeah, I mean there's a couple of things. A few weeks ago, we had the Friendship Fair up at campus on a Saturday. We had over 300 people come for the event. Some of them were our current students. Some of them were prospective students and caregivers. And we had a variety of activities all around campus. And those are the things, like, I tell people when if you laugh together, and if you eat together, and if you spend time together, like it becomes very easier. It becomes very easy or easier to negotiate challenges together and handle whatever comes your way. And it was really fun to spend time together. I was in the sculpting room as kids came in, and they were able to build all sorts of stuff with clay. There was a kite building activity. There was a bead making activity, and the intention was just to bring people together and have fun and serve some food and see the community, see the campus. So it was a really nice event. We have our showcase coming up next Friday. If you want to come by, you're welcome to, from 2 to 3:30 at the end of the day. That is a way for kids to share their projects with the community, with the audiences that include a lot of their caregivers, but also other audiences as well. This is another skateboarding story, but we have clubs. We have a lot of clubs, a huge variety of clubs on campus that are ramping up. I think they're starting next week again for the spring. But in the fall, it was one of my first days here, and I wandered over after school to this area, and there were kids in this huge area over the side of the school skateboarding back and forth and doing all sorts of tricks. And our facilities manager was the one who was leading the group. And I think that's one of the kind of cool things about here, is that because it's a single site, there's only one school, and everyone here has only worked here at this school in this community. They're not coming from other TGP schools or networks. That like all of us are a part of rowing together and being a part of the work. There's not many schools where like somebody like me would be like helping with a math PLC. Like that's really fun to do for me, and I get to still keep my hands in that. Thomas, our facilities manager, was running the skateboard club, and we had other people who are in positions, like they're not just teachers who are a part of the conversation, part of the work. Like there's everyone who's part of the journey here, and that I think is probably a nice way to like think of the campus and a consistent, reflective way of like that's really who we are. Is like everyone is a part of the work and trying to get better together and chipping in, doing their part. So that's probably a little vignette that gives you a little snapshot into who we are and who we're trying to evolve into.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking back about something I meant to mention earlier when you were talking about the arts education, that I think sometimes families, when they hear about like, oh, there's this great arts program, they worry like, oh my gosh, my kid's going to have to submit a portfolio or they're going to have to audition. But that's not the way it is. The idea is that the arts are for everybody, and it's an open enrollment charter school. So there's not a selective process. It's not, it's a tuition-free public school. So, that, right, any kid who's eligible, you have to apply and do the lottery, and but there's a spot for all those kids, not just the kids who already have a lot of, demonstrated like, oh yes, I can draw this way, I can dance this way. It's like, no, it's trying to welcome everybody in, and kind of like small schools or small towns where like everybody gets to participate. It's not like only the kids who do club sports get to be on the team. It's like, no, everybody pitches in.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's a part of it, and the offerings we have are for every kid. It's truly free. There's no cost to any family or caregiver that wants their student to go here. And there's a lot of really interesting things happening here for kids. I had somebody visit who had been here a couple of years ago, visited again a few weeks ago, and their comment was like the joy factors through the roof, and like kids are genuinely happy to be here at the campus, and if you couple that with like strong academic curriculums, strong academic outcomes that are going to come on the back end of like really getting strong at the curriculums, strong data cycles, so like you can stack these things together in a way that kids can be really happy and they can learn at high levels too. So it's a really interesting place. I'm honestly really, I'm not saying this for this call. I'm really genuinely happy that I landed here, and grateful to have ended up here. And out of all the places in the city or in South Texas that I could have ended up in a role, I'm really grateful to be here because the people, because the model, and because the want to do something that does right by kids in a system that often does not facilitate that. And like our system is not doing us any favors in the state, and this is a place that's trying to get better results, but doing it with kids, thinking about kids first.
Yeah. We've gotten some more fun comments. So Jennifer Smith says, love our community, looking forward to the start of 6th grade next year, right? So current, it's K through 5, but next year adding 6th grade to be K through 6.
Yeah, so K through 6 next year, we are currently recruiting for our 6th grade. We're hoping that our 5th graders all roll up to 6th grade. And we'll have probably a couple of spots there in 6th grade. So if you're interested in 6th grade, we will have 6. And then after that, our plan is to go through 7th and then through 8th as well. So we will have at that point a K through 8 school. And even at that size, it'll be somewhere in the neighborhood of 750 to 850 range, depending on how the numbers pan out. So still a relatively small cohort size by grade level, where kids know each other well and they're part of a community. And I'm really excited, as somebody who used to work on a campus that was pre-K through 8. I'm really excited to build out the middle school to help our middle school kids identify how they can lead our younger kids, especially for those kids who have been here all the way through for several years and they're going into middle school. How do they lead our community, serve our community, build out a student council, like really build out some systems here where kids can see their projects and see that like come to life in a different way and see how they can impact their local community here at the campus, a potentially broader sense, in a way that sets them up to be really successful and contributing members of society later on, where they can really do great things for our world.
Yeah, yeah. So some more fun comments. So Elaine says that they missed TGP. They had to move out of San Antonio, but they say you're a wonderful leader. So I just wanted to share some good
Elaine,
feedback.
we miss you. Thanks.
Yeah. And then, and Kim talks about the campus being inclusive, that her child identifies as non-binary. And I think that's one thing that I really appreciate about TGP is that it's a very welcoming space.
It's very welcoming, and it's very kind. And one of the things that I've appreciated, I think, most about our community is that is our use of pronouns and the pronouns of the choosing of the person. And when I mess up, somebody calls me on it. And that's really cool that they would do that. And then I've started to do that for other people when there's a misstep there. And it's just really an accepting, kind, welcoming community that is just taking care of kids.
Yeah. Well, that's really okay. I'm really glad we don't have like a hard stop on Charmo chats, because then we can like address all these good questions. And but I want to make sure we also cover like kind of the nuts and bolts. So hopefully people listening to this and reading the blog post are curious. They want to come and learn more. Like, what would be some good steps for folks to do if they want to like set up a school tour, or they want to get their application in? And it's through so open enrollment's happening right now, right through March 15th.
That's correct. Yep, it's open enrollment. It's happening right now for the lottery. Post lottery, if there's still spots open, then you can still apply at that point. So preferably be before lottery, just to secure a spot in the lottery. And they can go to our website. The website has all sorts of information about the campus, background information, pictures of our staff. Lots to read and to sift through. There's a way to both apply, but you can also sign up for a tour on the website, and that's really clearly marked at the very top. So we hope that you do that. We offer the tours every Tuesday and Thursday, and if for some reason that's not convenient for your schedule, you can always message Liz, who's our enrollment coordinator, or myself, and we're happy to work with you and figure out a time where you can get in and see the campus. And the tour, one of the things I appreciate about Liz and the way she does the tours is that you really see the campus. You see the common spaces, you see classrooms, you can ask whatever questions you want. You really see everything. It's a pretty unfiltered look at the campus. Liz is lovely, and you'll enjoy getting to know her if you don't know her already. So yeah, I would encourage you to visit. And if you're not looking at our school as a viable option for yourself, or you're just curious, come visit and spend a little time and hang out, and just learn a little bit, connect a little bit. I think our community, one thing I believe in is that the charter community, and I think the broader educational community, can do a better job of not being in as much competition and just working closer together and learning and having grace for one another in a way that brings us together. This is really we're trying to raise kids and raise a community and support one another through the process, and we can do it together.
Yeah. To me, chartering is about choice, and so whether folks choose an open enrollment charter school like the Gathering Place, or they choose an in-district charter school like the SASD choice schools, right, or magnets, or it's whatever works for the child, and whatever their caregiver decides is going to be the right fit for them. We're just trying to find the information so that they can sort out what all these options are. So I appreciate you talking about that. I think we do need more cooperation and more understanding, and just trust the caregivers to do the research and find the right places for their kids. So I appreciate you all being so welcoming, and just shout out to Liz. I'm a huge fan of Liz. She comes to our school Discovery Day events and talks to families about the Gathering Place, and she's just wonderful to work with. So I really appreciate her. And then for anyone who's listening on the podcast, they can't see the screen, I've got the URL on the screen, but it's the Gathering Place K12, so K12.org. And that gets you to the website. But also, if you go to sachartermodels.com, it's on the top of the blog right now. That's got links to the website, also how to sign up for the school tour, how to fill out the inquiry form, the phone number, address, right? So we haven't mentioned the location, but it's just off Loop 410. So, but it's on the kind of the northwest side. So west of Bandera Road, right where it intersects Loop 410. So northwest side, but not far northwest side. More inner northwest side.
Yeah, it's really not. It's really not. It's pretty central northwest, just west of I-10. Yeah.
That's what I'm amazed that you guys found that much land, or when they set up Gathering Place, they found that much land like in the city. It is sometimes I miss the exit, and then it's a long way to get back to it. Maybe that's why like a business didn't want it, but for kids, it's a fantastic place to have a school.
Yeah, you miss the exit one time, you don't forget it, and then if you work here, you don't miss it again.
Yep, been there. Yep. Well, great. Well, Brian, thank you so much for trusting me to come and share kind of the evolution of the Gathering Place, and I hope this encourages families to take a closer look and sign up for a school tour. Talk with Liz, get the download on what's happening now at the Gathering Place.
Thanks, Inga. Thanks for the time.
Yeah. Okay. Take care.